Would you dare look into an antique mirror after hearing it shows people who aren't really there? The mirror in the attic. In 2004, a young couple, Aaron and Marcus, bought an old farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania to renovate and start a family. As they cleaned out the attic, Aaron discovered a tall, dust-covered antique mirror tucked behind a stack of crates. It was beautifully crafted but felt off. Still, she decided to clean it and place it in their bedroom. That's when things began to change. Aaron started waking in the night to soft whispers. When she looked into the mirror, she occasionally saw a shadowy figure behind her, but when she turned around, no one was there. Marcus didn't believe her until one morning. He woke to see a foggy handprint on the inside of the mirror's glass, larger than either of theirs. One night, Aaron stared into the mirror and saw her reflection blink. When she hadn't, the reflection slowly smiled, while her real face remained frozen in horror. They called in a local paranormal investigator who, upon entering the room, refused to even approach the mirror. "This isn't just haunted," he said. "It's a portal." The mirror now resides locked away in storage, covered in salt and hidden from sight. What if the child you saw was never really there? The girl on the steps. In 2016, a delivery driver named Marcus was doing his late-night rounds in a quiet neighborhood outside Savannah, Georgia. As he approached one house, he saw a little girl in a white dress sitting on the front steps, staring at the street. Concerned, he asked if she was okay. She didn't respond, just stood up and walked to the side of the house. Marcus knocked on the door to let the residents know. An older woman answered and immediately turned pale. "You saw her," she whispered. "There hasn't been a little girl here since my daughter died." In that exact spot, 20 years ago, when Marcus looked back, the steps were empty. No footprints, just the lingering chill of something that shouldn't have been there.
Can a house remember its pain and share it with you? The attic that never forgot. In 2007, a couple moved into a century-old farmhouse in rural West Virginia. From the start, they felt uneasy, especially around a narrow stairwell that led to the attic. At night, they heard footsteps pacing above them, despite the attic being sealed shut with nails and boards. One morning, the husband discovered deep scratches along the inside of the attic door, as if someone or something had tried to claw their way out. After prying it open, they found nothing but dust and a small, rotting child's shoe in the corner. After doing research, they learned the home once belonged to a man who locked his mentally ill daughter in the attic for years. She died up there alone. They moved out 6 weeks later. No one has lived in the house since.
What if the voice calling your name wasn't human? The voice in the trees. In 2003, a park ranger named Luis was patrolling a remote forest in northern California when he heard his name echoing through the trees. At first, he thought it was a prank, but the voice sounded exactly like his mother, calm, gentle, and hundreds of miles away. He followed the voice for nearly 10 minutes, deeper into an area with no trails. As the sun began to set, the voice turned urgent. "Come here, Luis, hurry." That's when he stopped. His instinct screamed to run. He turned back and realized he'd been walking in a perfect spiral. No path, no footprints behind him, just silence. When he finally made it back to his truck, his radio crackled to life. His supervisor was yelling he'd been missing for over 2 hours. Luis never found the source of the voice, but he never patrolled that part of the forest again.
What if a dream warned you about something before it happened? The nightmare that saved her life. In 2011, a woman named Carla from New Mexico had the same nightmare 3 nights in a row. In it, she was driving down a winding road when her brakes failed, sending her car over a cliff. Each time, she woke up at the exact same moment, just before impact. On the 4th day, she planned a weekend trip through a mountain pass. Halfway through packing, she froze. The route matched the one in her dream. Spooked, she took a different highway instead. Later that evening, she saw breaking news. A rockslide had crushed part of the original road. A car had gone over the edge. Same model as hers. Same color. What if you saw your own face, staring back at you from a crowd? The doppelganger on the platform. In 1998, a college student named Jason was riding a crowded subway in Tokyo. As the train slowed at the next stop, he glanced at the platform and froze. Among the commuters stood a man who looked exactly like him. Not just similar, identical. Same build, same clothes, even the same backpack. Their eyes met. The double smirked and waved. Stunned, Jason rushed off the train to confront him, but the man had vanished into the crowd. Weeks later, Jason began experiencing intense déjà vu and vivid dreams of places he'd never been. One night, he woke up outside his apartment building, with no memory of how he got there, and found a subway ticket in his pocket, from a city he hadn't visited in years. To this day, he believes he saw his doppelganger, and that it left something behind.
What would you do if a stranger knew things about you they couldn't possibly know? the midnight stranger who knew too much. In 2014, a woman named Sarah from Pennsylvania was working the night shift at a small-town diner. Around 2:30 a.m., a quiet man walked in and ordered coffee. He barely spoke, but when he did, he said something chilling. "You shouldn't worry so much about your sister. The biopsy will come back clear." Sarah was stunned. No one at work knew her sister was undergoing medical tests. She hadn't told a soul. She tried to press the man for answers, but he just smiled, sipped his coffee and left. Security footage showed the man arriving and leaving, but there were no license plates on his car, and he paid in exact cash, no way to trace him. The next week, Sarah's sister called. The biopsy, benign. The man was never seen again.
What would you do if the walls of your room whispered your name, but no one else was around to hear it? The Whispers in Cabin 6. In the summer of 2018, a group of college friends took a weekend trip to a remote campground in the Appalachian Mountains. They booked a rustic wooden cabin, Cabin 6. It was old, creaky, and surrounded by trees that swallowed the light at night. On the first night, Emily, one of the friends, woke up suddenly around 2:45 a.m. She heard something, faint, like someone whispering her name. "Emily, Emily." The voice was soft, childlike, and seemed to come from the walls. Thinking it was one of her friends playing a prank, she ignored it. But the next night, her friend Jonah heard it too, this time from inside the closet. He opened the door. Nothing was there but cold air and scratch marks on the inside wall. On the third night, they all heard it. Multiple whispers. The lights flickered, and then the old radio in the corner, which hadn't worked for years, crackled to life and played. A distorted voice repeating, "Don't leave me here." They left immediately. Later, a park ranger told them the story of a child who went missing decades ago, last seen playing near Cabin 6. Her body was never found, but campers over the years reported hearing whispers and seeing small handprints on fogged windows. Would you dare spend the night in a room where guests report waking up to a woman whispering their name when no one else is there? Whispers in room 214, the ghost of the Magnolia Inn. In the heart of Mississippi, there's a small historic hotel known as the Magnolia Inn. Room 214 is infamous among staff and guests alike. According to numerous reports over the years, visitors have experienced chilling phenomena, lights flickering without cause, cold drafts in the middle of summer, and, most disturbing, soft whispers, calling their names at 3 a.m. One guest, a skeptical businessman traveling alone, checked into room 214 in 2019. Around 2:45 a.m., he awoke to the sound of his name being said in a woman's voice, soft and close. Thinking it was a dream, he turned over. Minutes later, the whisper returned, this time accompanied by the sensation of a cold hand brushing against his arm. When he sat up, no one was there, but the room was ice cold despite the thermostat, reading 72 degrees Fahrenheit. After checking out the next morning, the man spoke with the front desk. The clerk only nodded and said, "You stayed in 214? You're not the first. Still think it was just a dream? Or is something truly waiting in the shadows of that old hotel room?" What if a mirror didn't reflect your image, but someone else's? The mirror in room 313. In 2006, a young couple checked into a quiet and tucked away in rural Pennsylvania. They were given room 313, a room that, according to the innkeeper, was rarely used. The room looked normal enough, but one item stood out, a large antique mirror, mounted to the wall across from the bed. It was ornate, cracked slightly in the corner, and impossible to move. That night, the couple began to feel uneasy. The air was unnaturally cold, and the lights flickered constantly. Around 3:13 a.m., they later noted the strange coincidence. They both woke up to the sound of a woman crying, but no one was in the hallway. When they looked into the mirror, they didn't see their reflection. Instead, they saw a woman in a tattered wedding gown standing behind them. As they turned around, nothing was there. But when they looked back at the mirror, the woman raised her hand and pointed directly at them. Terrified, they left the room immediately and demanded to check out. The innkeeper, grim-faced, revealed that a bride-to-be had hung herself in that room in the 1940s after being abandoned at the altar. Guests since then had reported seeing her in the mirror, always at 3:13 a.m. No one stays in room 313 anymore. The mirror remains, and the crying still echoes through the hallway some nights. What if the person you picked up on the road disappeared from your backseat? The vanishing hitchhiker of Route 44. Along a quiet stretch of Route 44 in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, drivers have reported a terrifying and consistent phenomenon for decades. Around dusk or just after midnight, motorists traveling near the wooded part of the road often see a man standing on the shoulder, thumb out, asking for a ride. He looks real, tall, wearing a plaid flannel shirt, jeans, and boots. Many describe his face as pale, almost gray, with sunken eyes. When drivers stop, he silently enters the back seat and says nothing for several minutes. Then, just as the car nears a bend in the road, he vanishes. No door opens. No sound. Just gone. One driver in 1999 claimed she offered him a ride out of pity. She looked into the rearview mirror to check on him, and he was staring directly into her eyes through the mirror. When she turned around to ask if he was okay, the back seat was empty. Local legend says the man was a hitchhiker, killed in a hit-and-run on that very road in the 1960s. His body was never recovered, and the case remains unsolved. Ever since, he's been trying to find a way home, but he never stays long. To this day, Route 44 is still active, and every now and then, a driver calls the local police in a panic, asking where their passenger went.
In 1986, the Smurl family claimed their house in Pennsylvania was haunted, but not by a ghost, by a demon. They heard voices, saw dark figures, and even claimed something attacked them in their sleep. Desperate, they called Ed and Lorraine Warren the real life demonologists from the Conjuring series. What the Warrens found: a powerful, violent presence, and they believed it was feeding off the family's fear. Priests tried to cleanse the house, but the activity never fully stopped. Now, their nightmare is the focus of The Conjuring, Last Rites, hitting theaters this year. Was it real or mass hysteria? You decide.
The Haunted Hospital, March 2007. New Orleans, Louisiana. In March of 2007, a group of friends, all avid urban explorers, decided to visit an abandoned hospital in New Orleans. The hospital had been closed for years, and its eerie history only added to the thrill of exploring it. The building was dilapidated, with broken windows and decaying walls, but they knew it was going to be an adventure. As they walked deeper into the hospital, they felt the usual thrill of discovery. They found old medical equipment and used beds and papers strewn about. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. The only sound was their footsteps echoing down the long hallways. Then they heard it, a faint sound of something that didn't belong. At first, they thought it was just the building settling, but the sound grew louder. It was a soft whispering, almost like someone was speaking, but too quiet to make out the words. They froze, listening closely. There were no other people in the building. No staff, no security, just them. The whispers became more distinct. One of the group members, Sarah, turned to her friend Jason. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Jason nodded but didn't say anything. He was already looking around, his face pale. They tried to convince themselves it was just the wind, but the air inside the hospital was still. That's when they noticed something truly strange. One of the doors, which had been closed when they passed it earlier, was now wide open. Curious, they cautiously approached the door. It led into an old patient room, the walls covered in peeling paint and the floor scattered with trash. But inside, something caught their eye, a figure standing at the foot of a bed. The figure appeared to be dressed in a hospital gown, just standing still, staring at the floor. Before they could react, the figure slowly turned its head toward them. The group froze. Then, as if on cue, the whispers stopped. The figure, which had been motionless for what seemed like forever, slowly started walking toward them. Slowly at first, then quicker. They ran, as fast as they could, out of the hospital, past the crumbling walls, and out into the night. They didn't stop running until they were safely in their car. None of them spoke a word for the entire drive home. No one wanted to talk about what had just happened. But when Sarah tried to check her phone, she realized something terrifying. Her phone's camera had captured something. A figure, standing in the room. Even though no one had been able to see it at the time, they never returned to the hospital. To this day, they can't explain what happened. They're not sure if it was a ghost, a hallucination, or something far worse. But all of them agree on one thing: they will never go back. What if the clock in your house didn't just tell time, but trapped it? The clock that ticked backward. In 2009, a woman named Claire inherited an old grandfather clock from her late uncle, a reclusive man who lived alone in rural Maine. The clock was beautifully carved, but it hadn't worked in years, or so she thought. Claire placed the clock in her hallway. One night, around 3 a.m., she heard it ticking, loud, steady, unnatural. When she got up to inspect it, the hands were moving, but backward. Stranger still, each time the clock ticked in reverse, she'd see brief flashes of her uncle's face in the glass, as if he were trapped inside. Whispers filled the hallway, all in his voice. "Don't fix it. Don't open the back." Ignoring the warning, Claire hired a clock repairman. The moment he opened the back panel, a cold wind rushed through the house. Lights flickered. Every clock in her home, digital, analog, even her phone, froze at 3:17 a.m. The repairman fled and never returned. Since then, Claire says the grandfather clock still ticks, only at night, and the voices haven't stopped. Have you ever heard a voice coming from the apartment next door that wasn't supposed to be there? The Neighbor's Voice, May 11th, 2022, Brooklyn, New York. It started innocently enough. My new apartment was quiet, too quiet. I had just moved to Brooklyn, excited about the fresh start. But something about the building felt off. The other tenants were friendly enough, but the silence between the walls was almost suffocating. One night, while I was in bed, I heard a voice through the wall. A woman's voice, soft but clear, as if she were speaking directly into my ear. At first, I thought it was just the sounds of my neighbors talking. But then, the voice began to sound more urgent, hushed, like someone was trying to hide what they were saying. Don't open it. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The voice was coming from next door, but I had never heard anyone in that apartment. The tenant, an older man I'd seen briefly when I moved in, never made any noise, never had visitors. I tried to ignore it, but night after night, the same whisper would come through the wall. Don't open it. Please. Curiosity got the better of me, and I finally knocked on the neighbor's door one evening. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I left, thinking I'd never figure it out. But the next night, as I lay in bed, the voice was back. But this time, it was different. It wasn't a whisper. It was crying. Desperate sobs, muffled but unmistakable. I couldn't take it anymore. I called the landlord, demanding to know about the apartment next door. He was quiet for a long time, then said something strange. The apartment next door has been vacant for years. No one's been living there. Confused and terrified, I tried to get a closer look. That's when I noticed the door. The door to the neighbor's apartment was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The apartment was empty, completely barren, covered in dust. But the voice came from somewhere deep inside the room. It was still crying. Who, or what, was still living there? What would you do if a stranger's alarm kept going off in your bedroom? The alarm that wasn't mine. September 9th, 2023, Denver, Colorado. It began on a Saturday morning. I was jolted awake at exactly 4:17 a.m. by an alarm blaring from my phone. Except it wasn't my alarm. The tone was unfamiliar, eerie, and piercing. My screen just read, "Unknown alarm." I dismissed it, assuming it was some glitch or app issue. But the next morning, it happened again. Same time, same chilling tone. No app, no entry in my clock settings. I factory reset the phone, deleted everything. Still, it went off. Then one morning, something new appeared. A message beneath the alarm. Just 2 words. Get up. I searched online. Forums, tech blogs, nothing. No one else had experienced anything like it. Then, on the 5th morning, the alarm went off again. But this time, it wasn't just the sound. There was someone standing at the foot of my bed. A tall figure, featureless in the dark, backlit by the glow of my phone. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. My body locked in place as the alarm blared. Then, as suddenly as it started, the figure was gone. The message changed the next day. You're awake now. The alarm hasn't gone off since. But I haven't slept through the night since then, either. Because I know the alarm wasn't just waking me up. It was letting something in. If your alarm rang at a time you never set, would you dare check who it's for? Have you ever heard something breathing where no one should be? The Thing Under the Stairs, October 3rd, 2020. Richmond, Virginia. When I moved into my new townhouse, I was thrilled. Affordable rent, quiet neighborhood, and a cozy space to myself. There was only one thing that bothered me. The small, locked door under the stairs. The landlord said it was just a crawl space. Nothing important, sealed for safety reasons. I didn't think much of it, until the scratching started. At first, I thought it was mice. Then came the slow, steady breathing. Deep, rhythmic, like someone sleeping on the other side of the wall. I pressed my ear to the door one night. The breathing stopped. Then, something knocked back. I called the landlord again, and he got defensive, too defensive. Told me not to mess with it, said it was sealed for a reason. That was the first time I heard fear in his voice. Of course, I didn't listen. Curiosity turned to obsession. One night, I pried the door open. Dust fell. The hinges creaked. Inside, it was pitch black, colder than the rest of the house. I shined a flashlight in. The space was empty, almost. There were scratch marks on the walls, long, deep gouges, and something written in faded, smeared ink. It waits until you look. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered, then died. I felt breath on my face. Not mine. Hot and close. I slammed the door shut and haven't opened it since. But every night now, I hear it again, scratching, breathing, waiting. And sometimes, I hear it whisper my name. If something lives behind the wall, how long can it stay hidden?
Have you ever received a call from yourself? The missed call, April 12, 2023. It was a regular Wednesday night, the kind that fades into memory without effort. The air was still, the apartment quiet, just me, a half-finished cup of tea, and the hum of my phone charging on the counter. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I received a call. My screen lit up with a name I knew too well. Mom? Odd, she never calls that late. I answered, expecting concern or maybe bad news. But there was only silence. Then static. A slow, mechanical breathing that wasn't mine. I hung up and texted her. No reply. Then I noticed something strange. The call hadn't come from her number. It came from mine. My own number had called me. I tried calling it back, straight to my voicemail. I played the message. What I heard was my own voice, low and urgent. Don't answer the door. Right then, someone knocked. I never opened that door. But the note I found the next morning, slipped under it, read, "You answered. I still don't know what would have happened if I had.